Hello, and welcome to the Modern Romantic Podcast, where we celebrate romanticism through art and people doing incredible things. Hello, I am three kobolds in a trench coat. Hi, I'm Trey. You can find me at OrpheTunes on most social media accounts. Tonight, we would like to extend a very warm welcome to a returning guest on our show, the fantastic and equally incredible Jennifer Gershon. Welcome,
Wow.
Jennifer.
Wow, what an intro. Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. We would like to give a lovely shout out to my forever co host, Emily, who cannot be with us tonight, but we will have her on next week's podcast. Emily, wherever you are, if you're listening to this, we love you and we can't wait to have you back. But we're very excited that Jennifer Gershon agreed to be on our show. She's so magnanimous. A little story about having her back on here. The original podcast that we had her on, due to some technical difficulties, was lost to the ages. So we begged and we pleaded on our hands and knees, and she magnanimously said yes. So, Jennifer, it is so good to have you back.
I paid them.
I'll accept my tip later.
Full disclosure.
So Jennifer, I just want to, and do you go by Jen or Jennifer?
Jen or Jennifer, either works. Yep. Jenny's the
Okay.
only thing I won't turn my head.
Duly noted. So no one ever start an email to Jen as Jenny, please.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe two people in the whole world that can get away with it for various reasons, and that's about it.
So one thing we do want to call out tonight, this is Jennifer Gershon. She could be found on Instagram at Visuals, and that is Vizzzuals on Instagram. She's also available on Facebook and has two other Instagram handles, at Visuals Faces and at still_visuals. Um, so, with that being said, I know that you've been on the podcast before, but I would like our audience to kind of get reintroduced to you. So, would you kind of talk about how you came to be in photography?
Sure. So I would say it started as a kid. My dad was a pathologist, and I inherited his camera, which he used at work to take pictures through his microscope. So it was always fitted with a macro lens, and I didn't really understand at that time what that even meant. But I would just grab his camera with the same old lens, and I used it for many years, taking pictures at school, taking pictures traveling. So my start was in film, which to this day, I don't even know that I could use a film camera anymore. I think I'd be pretty afraid to go there. But I feel like I've always enjoyed photography, and when things sort of shifted to digital, I just decided that I really wanted to dig in and learn it from the ground up. So I would say about 8 or 9 years ago, I made a concerted effort to really start at the beginning with the exposure triangle and teach myself all of the basics, which led me through everything from um, long exposure photography to still life to what I love to do the most right now, which is portraiture.
And I do have to say, because I think I said it last time and I'll say it again, I love your artwork and I
Thank you.
love your photography. There was one in particular that I want to talk about. I saw it on your um, Visuals Faces, and it's the one with the mermaid with the bubbles
Yes.
around
Yes.
her.
She's on
That,
my wall here.
is she really?
She is.
That honestly, I love that picture because it kind of appeals to me from like a little bit of Art Nouveau style, just kind of that like light and dark contrast, and it's kind of a very stark contrast, but also just that kind of theme. And I don't know, tapped in a little bit to some of the artwork that I've seen before, but it was incredible. I loved
Thank
it.
you. Yeah, that one, people seem to respond to that one. I think number one, because it's just so bizarre and they don't really know what to make of a mermaid vacuuming in a living room with bubbles floating all around her. And also because the model, who is a really dear friend of mine and someone that I met during quarantine, is the model in that image, and people absolutely adore this girl. She's wonderful. Like, she's not only a great model, but she's just a really cool old soul of a person at the ripe old age of 22. Um, but it was. I wish I could say that I had the whole thing planned out and conceptualized, but it was literally one of those very last minute sort of things where improvised it, threw a few things together really based on color. I wanted to go with this aqua color. I had an old, I guess it's from the 50s vacuum cleaner and a telephone. What else is in there? The sort of aqua mermaid suit, and I had some fabric, and so it really started with the color, and then we said, "Hey, she should just be doing something that a mermaid would not be doing, and why don't you just vacuum and you can pretend you're on the phone talking to someone about how much you hate this job." That was pretty much it, and I don't know, she just knows how to give that sort of blank stare, and that's what we went with.
Oh, what was the other one? It was one that you had posted recently. Okay. Um, Again, gonna go back to like that same sort of time period, but the 1920s shoot that you did with, and I'm not going to pronounce her handle correctly, but it's at Mira underscore ecos.
Yeah, same model. Yeah, same model.
Okay.
So she's a bit of a chameleon. When I first met her, she had short blonde hair. And then over the last few years, she's gone long, short, dark, light. So she most recently showed up and she had, virtually a pixie cut and dark hair. And she's also someone who likes to collect vintage like I do. So she found this dress that was completely kind of on its last legs. I mean, it's a beautiful dress, but it was definitely full of holes. So she showed up, and true to patterns, I go through these collecting jags. So I happened to purchase a number of rugs. So we made a set around the rugs and this dress, and we did a few different setups, but she's just very elegant. She's like a very sort of slight, elegant person with these beautiful hands and just always knows just what to do with her hand to convey a little something extra. Big eyes, and just she just embodies that period really well. I will say the dress needed a little bit of Photoshop repair work in places, but it was still beautiful nonetheless.
Yeah, I do like the lace detailing on it, but that's me getting more into like the costuming and or the design work of the dress and that sort of thing. But that is a stunning dress.
Yeah, it's neat. It's kind of nice in studio. I shoot with a very narrow aperture, so I like to collect all that detail. When you talk about painterly, a lot of people sort of go the other direction and they want to do something that's a little bit softer, a little more out of focus to give sort of that painterly, ethereal feel. But I love the detail, so I have a hard time giving up that detail when you start really zooming in and you see the fabric with little tiny sequins and just like beautiful little patterns that the detail is there. You don't see it so much on the internet, but I see it as I'm editing the pictures and when it's printed.
Well, and it's funny that you bring up that kind of painterly effect because one of the rugs in the background has a little bit of texture to it, and it makes it look like it's that oil that's kind of dried onto canvas a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so had I not known that this was a live model, I would have been like, "Oh, this is a really great painting."
Yeah, I've been playing with textures a little bit more than I have in the past, so I'll sort of selectively bring those in, which gives it almost a 3D feel. If you use it very selectively, you can kind of get that effect of either varnish or sometimes it looks shiny, sometimes it looks raised, but there's so many textures out there and so many ways to blend them into the photos. So it's fun to play with.
So one thing that, as you were talking about, like the switch over from film over to digital, um, this is going to be a divisive question, I think, for some of her like photography people. But would you prefer film or digital?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I like I said, I don't think I could really pull anything out of an analog camera anymore, so I do like the flexibility of digital.
Mhm.
Um, what I do miss from film is, of course, being in the dark room and the smell and sort of the magic of revealing what you just don't know what you're gonna get. You sort of remember what you took pictures of,
Mhm.
but then it's just sort of revealed there in this amazing bath of liquid, and it's really exciting to see that, and, I remember a little bit, with the dodging and burning and doing that all manually. Very, very different than doing it through Photoshop, but there was something kinda cool about that. I thought very, very, very brief time that maybe I would try to set something up in my basement, but there are a lot of considerations with chemicals and disposal of chemicals, and I'm on a well and septic system, so I really wouldn't wanna deal with it here.
Yeah,
Plus, who
no.
has the time?
PSA from the Modern Romantic and from Jennifer, please do not pour your chemicals out into anywhere close to the septic system, please. Uh,
No,
Thank you. Sincerely, Society.
or your water supply.
Oh, God, no. I already have nightmares about stuff like that. It's really like one of those fears that I don't know. It's just weird. But um, Archer 33X in the chat said, analog camera. Honestly, hadn't thought about that way. Yeah, same. Um, I I still have I think it's a Canon film camera. It was like circa 2002, 2003, like right as digital was taking over, but it hadn't yet quite made that hard flip over. So it still has the same roll of film in it that I had 15 years ago,
Oh,
and I don't know what's on there.
you should have it developed.
Do they still develop film?
Absolutely, yes, you can find a place to do it. Absolutely.
Okay. Um, Maybe I'll do a reveal when I get it developed. I'll just be like, these are garbage pictures. But here, let's take a look. Flashback up from 20 years ago.
You never know. I mean, I collect cameras, I collect old cameras, so sometimes they still have the film in it. I know other people that collect too, sometimes they have it developed, and you never know what's gonna show up on some of these things,
Oh,
but
my boyfriend Seth and I were actually at an antique shop, and they had some older cameras. There were some from the 1970s. There was one from the 1960s, like one from the 1990s. And I was like, "Oh my god, my dad had this one." I'm like, "Oh
uh-huh.
my god, it's in an antique shop." God, I'm old. Uh,
Oh, yeah, all the stuff we grew up with as kids, those are all antiques now. It's very
oh
sad.
no.
It's very sad, but, I mean, when you think about it, yeah, what crossed my mind today, also with the clothing, I was thinking about, like Levi's cords, like, those are antiques now. We grew up with those Levi's cords.
Oh my god,
I mean,
they
that was a
are.
staple thing, but you don't see them anymore.
No, okay, that's I have more journaling to do tonight. Um, let's see. Archer 33X in the chat says, "Oh dear lord, I'm so old." No, you're not. No, you are not.
You're in good company then.
Um, so we've talked about your the models that we've used or that you've used, and we've talked about like some of the creative process. But I would kind of like to know, you love portraiture, but how do you go about composing your photos? Like, what if I were to schedule studio time with you, and we were to go into the studio, how would you compose your shots?
Yeah, so nothing would happen in advance, very likely. It would probably happen when you showed up, and it's funny because I'm shooting a guy next weekend who looks a lot like you,
Oh
a
god.
lot like you. Sometimes someone will say, "Let's shoot. I have this thing or this idea." I'll say, "Okay, bring it. Come along with it." Sometimes they get here. I say, "Oh, I have just got this thing." or this reminds me of something that you remind me of. And then we just sort of have a little area and we'll just start pulling things. And what'll end up happening is you just sort of get a vibe and it's just pure improvisation. Somebody might be really good at making a certain type of expression, which somewhere like burned in the back of my brain is a memory of like a painting or a photograph or a movie scene, something like that. And then we just riff off of it. So really when people show up, usually starts with we'll eat something, have some coffee, 'cause coffee always starts the shooting process. And then we just grab fabric and I'll do the backdrops and grab furniture from whatever room it's living in that day and get dressed. And then sometimes we just start making up little scenes. And on occasion, there will be certain specific images that I want to use as inspiration, but most of the time it's pure improvisation, which is much more freeing than sort of boxing yourself into, I have this idea, now I have to make it work. You kind of put a little bit of pressure on yourself when it's that sort of thought out. So I like the freedom of improvising.
The same sort of thing for me kind of goes into theater. There's you can rehearse so much, but then there's that magic in like kind of what happens in the unexpectedness. And that I think, yeah, there's magic there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's an opportunity to just play, which is something that I think adults forget to do. I mean, I remember as a kid, 90% of the time was just making things up. We would just pretend we were somewhere. We would pretend that we were whatever. You play house, you play doctor, you play whatever. You interview each other, and you can do that. You know, you can do that, and you can have this physical record of it when you're taking pictures of it.
You absolutely can. And I don't care if you are 15 or if you are 99, you are absolutely able to go out, do make believe, make up stuff, and just have fun. Like,
Absolutely. I'm laughing because Credence in the chat windows is saying, "So do you sideline as a prop warehouse?" And the answer would be, "Yeah." Yes. Yeah, I started my day today Googling, skull replicas. I want to get in my sort of arsenal of props. I want a really good, authentic looking skull. So I spent about 20 minutes looking for that today.
did you find one though?
I found a couple, yes. Yes. I kind of want to see them in person though.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't want it to be shiny and resiny. I want it to really look like it's weathered and
um, if you go to Texas at all, if you just kind of go out, I'm going to say like West Texas ish area, somewhere between Odessa and El Paso, you're going to find enough longhorn skulls.
oh,
So
yeah,
I trust me, they are going to be very worn, very weathered, and I think exactly what you're looking for.
that's cool. I want a human one.
Oh, what?
Not a true one. You can purchase a true one, but yeah. I mean, I have tons of deer skulls because I do pick bones up in my travels. But I want one for one of my still lives, and then also for some thoughts that I have in mind for some images to have something good.
Okay, kind of worried me there for a second when you said I want a human one.
Yeah, apparently it's legal. You actually can purchase a human skull. I think I would feel funny about having it in the house, but
I, I gotta say respect, like respect. Um, Me and medical things, no.
oh, those are the
Someone,
best.
no, no. Like I respect it that like science in general is its own art form, but me witnessing that, I have seen the inside of my own stomach. The explanation of that is my appendix ruptured when I was 10, and they had to come out and change my bandages pretty consistently. to kind of help sop up things. And I got very brave and went to go peek. And yeah, so we're just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, I can relate. I have a story. I don't know if anyone wants to hear it, but yeah, I mean, I've had C-sections, so all I will say is sometimes the doctors don't close the glass door that's reflecting back what they're doing on the surgical table. And sometimes you get a glimpse of what's going on.
Oh,
It's pretty fascinating. I was more intrigued than freaked out by it, to be honest. It was something.
I'm going to take a little sip of water now. Let's see. Let's see. Would wait for someone to ask about the skull, and would sorry, Archer33X in the chat said, I would wait for someone to ask about the skull and would start quoting the scene from Hamlet. I was asked to not to do that anymore. Archer, I do have to ask, who asked you not to do that anymore? Give it just a second here. My boss. Duly noted. Oh my gosh. Well, in terms of, it's so interesting to me how many people are not super grossed out by like the medical things and how it gets seen as this kind of art form. And many people see skulls as being like dark and brooding and, somewhat on the gruesome side. But it sounds more like you're looking at it from um, more of how can I use this artistically and how many different ways can I use this? Kind of going back to that play thing. Um,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, also, as we were discussing, I mean, my father was a pathologist, so I grew up with a library of medical books with things that most 7, 8-year-olds never would see. Most adults would never see. I didn't really think twice about it. It was just part of his work. So, he would bring things home as well. And, we would do science projects, and he had access to things that, again, that most kids would not have access to. So that was all sort of normal, I would say. Um, but no, I mean, I think it's all really interesting. It's we're all there. That's what we are, but we're so out of touch with that, like what's in there and under there, and you're like mortified.
I sorry, it is just I have very vivid memories of those medical operations, and I am so very sorry that that is coming to light on this podcast. um, so what are some of the things that really inspire you besides like human skulls and like human anatomy? What are some other inspirations that you have?
I mean, besides the obvious, which is just classical painting. I was an art history major, so I've seen tons of it. I've traveled, so I've seen many museums with all of this stuff. Apart from that, I think for me, the portraits, it's just about that connection with people, and I would say I'm not really so much into the posy stuff.
Mhm.
So, sometimes I've shot models and done the thing where you're more focused on, the physical position of somebody. But to me, there's something extra that I wanna see, that I wanna connect with, and partially it's for the picture and partially because I think there's something social about it, there's something therapeutic about it, and when people come, I hope that they leave and they say, not, first of all, like, "When am I gonna get the pictures?" It's, "That was really fun." Like, I want them to really have fun during the process. So the process is sort of the pinnacle of it to me. So I'm inspired by seeing people play around with, their emotions, their reactions to things, the humor of it. Sometimes I tell people just sit and just, either think of this or just try not to think of anything. And some of the expressions that you get you just capture a very authentic moment rather than trying to get someone like perfectly posed, body wise and hand wise. So there's something when it feels authentic. I think that's what I strive for mainly. Even if it's a stage set, I want the reaction and the emotion to look authentic.
Yep. And Credence in our chat said, bring the inner them out to the frame.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like the way you framed that, Credence. I had a theater professor who talked about how like we're always having this inner dialogue inside of our head, and they would know when we were just reciting words versus when we were like thinking something and thinking about what we were saying, and kind of having that meditation point, um, just as like a frame of reference. And they commented how much our physicality changed. We would smile, we would get depressed more, depending on what we were thinking about. And they said, I knew when you were connecting to the text because your physicality changed.
Yeah.
And that is a telltale sign. So it's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's where it's beneficial if you have someone who's a little trepidatious about being in front of the camera to have somebody who's important to them in the room with them. And it could be a child, it could be a spouse. And, I recall I had a couple of friends over and we, like, very last minute decided to do portraits. And I could tell she was very uneasy. And sometimes people come in and, as you get older, it's not so fun to be in front of the camera anymore. Like I've thought about doing self-portraits, but I'm mortified when I see myself in front of the camera. But, she was brave enough to put herself out there and to do this portrait. And she was uncomfortable. But at one point,
Mhm.
I just asked her husband just to sort of position himself in the corner of the room. And I just asked her just to not think, not to do anything, but just look at him. And that was ultimately the picture that I ended up presenting to them because she just like all of that anxiety just dropped away and she just looked relaxed and calmed by him, which was really sweet. Yeah. And it was also like very much the way their relationship is. Like he was just a very nurturing partner to her. So it was kind of cool to see, cool to capture.
I am going to be a little selfish and call out Seth, my boyfriend. He does that for me quite a bit. And all I have to do is like look at him.
Yeah.
And you can tell when you're like in love with somebody and you just kind of look at them and they don't cause you anxiety. They take it a lot away from you.
Yeah.
So, Seth, if you're listening right now, I
Oh.
love you.
See, it's awesome to express it back too, because I think sometimes people they don't, and it's not because of any reason other than maybe they think that it's assumed. So it's nice to call it out.
It is. Love is nice. And with less than 2 weeks until Valentine's Day, this is your modern romantic reminder that have you checked in with your partner? Have you gotten them something special? Have you told them that they love you or that you love them? Now's a really good time to remind them that you love them.
Oh,
Just saying.
oh, my partner's gonna be my dentist who's pulling my wisdom teeth out.
Oh
Isn't that a terrible way to spend Valentine's Day?
no. Oh. Well, I hope it goes well. I hope that there is not. The only thing that I hope you don't do is like, can you just hold a mirror up while I like look at what you're doing?
I plan to be fully out, out, out.
Let's see. Archer said, I tell Emily all the time that she loves me. Good. Good, good, good. Well, please don't do what I did and accidentally tell the dentist that you love them. When I was completely knocked up, with like knocked out with laughing gas, and then I woke up, and they were like, "Yeah, so by the way, you told me that you loved me," and I was like, "What? Well, that's embarrassing."
I think that's a thing though. I mean, I watched my son I guess he was like 15 when he went under for some dental stuff.
Yeah.
and he was just so happy. He came out, he was so loopy and just so everything was just wondrous. Looking around and he said, they put a blankie on me." He's like, "Mom, they put a blankie on me." And he was just so smiley and happy. It was like the funniest thing. So it must be like it's a happy thing, this drug.
I hope so. Um, when it comes to kind of gearing more back to like the photography and that sort of thing, one of the questions that Seth and I wanted to ask you was with your art history background and with your focus on photography, have you explored any other art mediums?
I have not recently. No. As a kid, I drew a lot. And it pains me to recall this, but everything I ever did was chucked. During a move, I had boxes of sketches and things, and it was all just tossed. So, I have 0, recorded evidence of that. But, yeah, I used to draw, that was sort of my medium. My mother's a painter. I never really got into painting so much, but, yeah, I the more I get into this, the more I wish I could paint.
Hmm.
And I have the utmost respect for painters, and I've collaborated with a couple of painters now, and I see what they do, and they thank me for the images, their reference images, and I just, like, wanna bury in my head, like, "Come on, like, look what you're doing here. You're actually from nothing, you're creating this thing with your hands and with some material." And I don't know, I just admire painters. I just can't do it.
See, and I admire photographers and those who are so much more skilled with like artists and sculptors and those sorts of people because there's so much that you can do from your stance and from your visuals that again, not trying to make a pun on your Instagram
Yeah.
handle, but there's so much from your vantage point that I can't see. And so to be able to give a glimpse into something that you see and that you are crafting and that you're conceiving from start to finish, that to me is so utterly fulfilling. And I'm not jealous of that. I just want to like reach into that and pull that spark of inspiration and just hold on to that in hopes that I can make something that good.
You can make anything you wanna make.
And
Like, no one's gonna tell you how to do it or how it should be you can do anything you wanna do. I mean, it's completely open-ended. To me, that's daunting to have really blank canvas to sort of, you're like, "Oh my gosh, I gotta come up with an idea, like, what am I gonna make?" And, some of it's gonna be derivative,
Mhm,
and then you worry about that, and you can play this whole game of, like, you're afraid to just get started. And they say that's one of the hindrances as we get older compared to kids who make art, where kids are very free. When they draw, they just draw. They don't think about it. They don't analyze it. They just do it.
mm,
So I think as adults, we hinder ourselves because we're so afraid of either self-judging or getting judgment from others. So we don't even step into it
mhm.
and give it a shot. But there are so many ways. I mean, even iPhone photography or collages or I'm not going to say the AI stuff because I have my own opinions on the AI stuff, but really you can take anything and make anything. Even if you just, you collect things and you stack them a certain way, you're creating something. So it's I don't know, it's kind of freeing your brain to make things. Um, I do some improv, so I just sometimes link the two. And I think about that. I think of the techniques you use in improv to open your mind up and not get stymied, and try to think about how I could use that when I'm doing photos and not judge it. Like if you make a set, if you have a costume that doesn't work out, so what? You move on to the next thing. You've tried, you've learned something, you take it to the next part of the process.
So, has there ever been a time when you have felt stymied before? And what did you do to get yourself out of that funk, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, here's the weird thing, and I've had this conversation, with a few people about it. So, there's always this quest to learn. You always think that there's some magic bullet. There's something that's gonna get you to the level of, somebody that you really admire.
Mhm.
And I'll go through these periods where I just wanna take in more information. And sometimes I feel like that pushes me back because then I have all this information and it's kind of like you're in the kitchen with all these ingredients and you're like, "Great, I could make this, and this, but where do I start?" You're just bogged down. There's too much to deal with. So, yeah, I think, we had talked earlier about it a bit, is sort of staying in my lane and staying focused on the things that are working rather than all the time making it like now you have to do something different. And I think things evolve over time, but it's not always overnight and like a big change. I think over time things evolve a certain way and it will lead you down a different path. But yeah, I get stymied when I have too much input, too many different things happening coming at me at once.
And maybe that's kind of what I fall into. Um, Seth has gotten me more into like playing WoW and that sort of thing, and I'm a little over inundated because I'm jumping in at like this at a point where there are so many different things to learn and partake in that sort of thing. And he's done a really good job of like taking it section by section. If you can take a little bit and just focus on that, and then
Yep.
focus on a little bit, focus on that, and then this sort of thing. And so lately, he's just been asking, do you want to focus on this, this, or this?
Right.
And we just try to vary it up a little bit between that so it's not as overwhelming. So whether he realizes it or not, that's been really helpful.
Yeah. I mean, that's why, if you think about the way courses are structured in school, when you have learning that builds on a foundation, and over time, you need time to synthesize, you need time to step away from it. When you study for a test, it's not like you cram it all in and then you take the test. Usually you need a little bit of sort of reflective time. They say the best way to do it is, study, you sleep a little bit, take some time away, come back to it, and you retain it better. But yeah, you can't expect to do everything all at once. It's very idealized thinking that yeah, you can do everything all at once.
Not all of us can be Michelle Yeoh in everything everywhere all at once. I'm
Exactly.
sorry, but yeah, it's not gonna be like that.
No, I mean, you can multitask to a point. Something's going to fall by the wayside.
So when it comes to on the flip side of things, so we've talked about kind of when you felt stymied. Has there ever been a time when you were just on a creative high and it was just output, 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 output? Um, what kind of
Yeah,
went into that?
yeah, I think part of it was sometimes I will do group shoots, and this is always a weird thing. We talked about this, I think, during the last conversation about collaborating with other photographers, and I think ideally it sounds great. You think, oh my gosh, they're going to bring something to the table. I'm going to bring something to the table. We're going to do something bigger, better. It's going to be amazing. More, it's going to be better. Sometimes I find that's also a hindrance.
Mhm.
There's a social aspect that I love, but I feel like I can't or I won't put everything that I could possibly pull out of my brain um, during those times. And sometimes I know the solitude of working out something on my own is going to get me to a better place, a different place. I don't know, maybe more development. So we had some group things scheduled recently, and then of course with COVID and people getting sick, it ended up that I had a whole bunch of people to shoot within like a 2-day period. So I was supposed to sort of share the time, but I ended up doing a few different shoots with people and doing multiple sets with each of these people, and that was like a very like hyper creative time. I would say still going through pictures 2 months old, but yeah, I'd say that. It's sometimes it's just lonely. Sometimes you want the company, but it doesn't necessarily help you creatively. But sometimes you just want the company.
Yeah. Someone was saying like those who Those who have ADHD or something like that, something that helps them be creative or kind of think through things and be helpful is just to have somebody in the room,
Absolutely.
not help you out, but just be a presence.
It's so funny you said that because not even an hour ago, as again, I'm, like, trying to set up a still life because I really wanna get back to this, and it's a process. I was thinking if I just have somebody who's just around so I can focus and do it. I don't need them to do anything for me, but if they're just there, I know I can do it. So that's so true. I don't know why it is, it's so true.
Well, maybe it's like having that external oh, what's the word I'm thinking of?
Like a
That
guardrail, like a
yeah,
yeah.
something like a guardrail. Just someone as kind of a reminder of like, okay, I can do this. I also want to make sure that we have Credence called it the wandering stress soaker. Yes, the wandering stress soaker.
Aw.
We do have a couple questions in the chat here. I'd like to start off with a question from our producer, Sandra Sawyer. Hi, Sandra. When you first started, did you listen to others' advice or critiques, or did you try to just listen to your own inner voice regarding your creativity?
Yeah, that's always a good question. I think we all struggle with that, especially when we're sharing on social media. I think it's important to listen. I think it's important to sort of set your ego aside from time to time. Um, that said, I think who the critique comes from is very important. I think you have to be careful about who you're listening to, and there are tons of people out in social media who want nothing more than to either just talk because they want to be heard, they want to shut you down for whatever reason, or there's something ego related why they need to pull you down. I think that if you if you listen, eventually there will be somebody who is going to offer something that's going to be useful. And I think, like I said, you have to drop your ego and just say, okay, all right, consider it. Counter to that, I think it is also important to have your vision. And not everybody who historically has been successful has had the support of the public or the critics for that matter. um, I think ultimately you make art because you want to express yourself,
Mhm.
you want to decompress. There are a lot of sort of personal reasons why you do it, and I think if you are always cowing to other people and changing that, then you're sort of losing that connection to what you're doing. So I guess it depends also what your goals are. If you're looking to do something commercially, and maybe you need to listen to certain critics
Mhm.
to produce what's going to be desirable in the marketplace. But I think it's kind of a dance. I think you have to balance the two out.
Yeah. There's a little bit of a political backstory to the story that I'm going to talk about, but there's a creative who was approached to design some artwork for a Broadway show that shall remain nameless. If you follow the artist, you know who I'm talking about. But they posted about it, how they were only offered like a very small um, oh my god, I'm losing words tonight. They were only offered just a small amount of money to do what they consider to be a rather large amount of work. And for this rather large Broadway show, they were kind of talking about it. And so it's while they kind of understood like the opportunity to work with them and get their name out there was fantastic, and the critiques that might come with that, it's also on the flip side of knowing what you're worth.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so for you, like,
That's
have
always.
you ever oh, I'm so sorry. Go
I said
ahead.
that's always a tough one. That's a tough one.
Have you ever been offered an opportunity, but the return on that kind of investment was not gonna be something that would have propelled your career?
Every day I feel like, on one hand, you have people saying, "Oh, I really like what you're doing. I wanna do photos with you." And, you start talking about the logistics and the specifics of it. Then you talk about money, and all of a sudden, there are a zillion reasons why that's not happening. And that's a part I will always struggle with that. I don't have to do this for work. I have, a regular job, which it is my livelihood. So this really has to be fun for me. But at the same time, if people come to me looking for a specific result or specific deliverables, I feel like it's a service, and I feel like, yeah, I mean, it should be compensated. But it's hard with your own art, and when you're sort of creating something that is personal and that you're also getting something out of, to start talking about money. And yeah, I mean, and photography's have always been in a funny place. I think people can justify painting very often, and not so much price of photography. Um, it's a tough one. And the folks that are doing very well commercially, there's so many other factors that are going on there. So I think it's more than just what you're capable of doing. There's a whole sort of, there are marketing initiatives you have to take. There's social media, there's certain recognition by, folks that are influential that are affecting your price. So I think there are a lot of people that are gravely undervalued, but it's a hard thing to fight. It's a hard thing to justify.
Well, I think what we can say with the quality of your visuals, again, not trying to make a pun on the Instagram handle, but with the artwork that you're creating and that you're putting out there into the world, I can definitely say that you know your worth, and we now know your worth. So trust me, it is justified for sure.
Well, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I
Um,
just say no now. I honestly, I used to feel bad. I mean, I'm not gonna negotiate just because someone really needs photos for their website and they can't afford it. And I think about that. I'm like, but why? Like, why am I giving into that? It's taking away from what I'd rather be doing creatively. So, it's work, and I don't want it to be work necessarily.
No, and you've used a couple of words, and I just want to ask if you don't mind sharing. You've used words like deliverables or synthesized, and I do have to ask, what do you do for your 9 to 5?
I draft contracts.
Do you really?
I do, yeah.
Oh
Yep.
my god! In
Yeah,
my 9 to 5, so synthesize and deliverables are also something for me. I work in learning and development for my company, and those are two words that I hear consistently. So I
that's
was like,
funny.
"You work in learning and development, don't you?"
That's funny. Yeah, and yeah, there are a whole list of corporatisms that I have that I'm like, "Never use these words. These are terrible words. These are words that just they're like nails on a chalkboard words." I don't think
Um,
those 2 are, but there's some really bad ones.
oh yeah, we're not going to get into that, but
No, no, no.
I think that also kind of goes to say that you can still be an artist and still have like a 9 to 5 job. Um, so there are tons of people out there who are worried that because they're not doing it full time, that they're not a full artist, and I
Right,
think that's malarkey. Like
yeah.
that, you can absolutely still be an artist and still be able to have a 9 to 5 job.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to that argument, like, say you go in for a job interview and you're negotiating your salary. The argument really should never be that you need the salary because you have to feed your kids, because you
Hmm.
have to pay your mortgage. It should be, I'm asking for the salary because that's what I'm worth.
Hmm.
So it's kind of the same thing with this. I mean, I could argue, I could say, yeah, all right, I can pay my bills with my job. So I'm going to ask for money now, and people are going to say, oh, she doesn't really need the money. You can argue that, but it does take something away from it. I think you have to stay very clear about, what you're valuing. and it's still your time and your free time and time away from the things, again, that you want to be doing. And ultimately, if somebody is commissioning you for something, they're getting something out of it. They're asking you for services. They're asking you for a product. So, yeah, I have to practice that. I have to admit it's I don't like dealing with the money part of it. It's really not pleasant. um, I don't know what the answer is there. Maybe an agent. Maybe you have somebody just do your bidding for you.
I no idea. That is still a conversation that I'm trying to navigate myself.
Yeah.
Um, but what I can say is that if anyone out there in our listening land would like to apply to be Jennifer's social media manager, please apply at visuals on Instagram. We will send
Just
you a
answer
contact form.
the phone a little bit. Just pretend. "This is our agent. This is our secretary. Yes, this is the price. Yes. Okay, she'll get back to you on that. Yeah."
Jennifer, I'm proud to tell you that we have scored you 3 times your normal amount. What?
Yes, and it might help. I think, like, people with British accents, probably that help makes it sound, like, really legitimate too.
Yes, so all you have to do is either be British or be able to use a full posh British accent, and you can either apply with Jennifer herself, or you can send an email to please sponsor us. We love you at themodrom.com. It's there are so many things like as much as I don't like to admit it that I'm on TikTok, there are so many inspiring things that people putting out there of know your worth and know your value. Um, act what is it? Act your wage. I think is a phrase
Oh,
that I've
interesting.
seen.
Yeah, interesting.
So it's nice to see that across like arts, not just the artistic realm, but also from a professional standpoint. So it's that's incredibly heartwarming.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, and you see discussions in some of these groups where some people wanna put themselves out there, they wanna do photography, and they start undercutting, and they start setting prices that are so below normal market value, and then
Mhm.
that incenses other people who are trying to establish, working wages, money that they can actually live on. So, you do see people offering some crazy packages for photos, and that's another, I think, challenge to folks who are doing this full time is there are so many photographers out there offering so many different things, and sometimes it really does boil down purely to the price. So it's hard. I think you have to separate out your personal work from what you're doing professionally,
Mhm.
and many people, that it is very distinct. There's different standards for what they're doing for their own expressive work versus what their product is that they're offering to for fees.
I agree. Let's see. Archer 33X said there are photographers and there's dude with a camera.
Yes, and there's
Yes.
dude with an iPhone, which really, yeah, people don't like that either.
No. Okay. I will admit I am dude with the camera. I do not offer like professional photography services. But I fall into the category of I can take you a picture and that's about it.
You you can use whatever you have, and it like none of it all comes down to what they're looking for, and you can put yourself out there and you can try things. And there are some great things that people are doing with iPhone cameras too, though.
Mhm,
None of that really matters,
mhm,
but there I don't know. There's a lot of ego in the photo world. Believe it or not, there's a lot of ego. So sometimes people don't like the dude with the camera because the camera isn't a $3,000, $4,000 camera,
mhm.
and they're bitter because they're still getting good pictures though. But I don't know.
It's true. Um, for you, if you could have like we're about to go into fantasy land. Money's no object. Um, you have just received like bukus of money, and you have every option available. Describe what your dream camera looks like.
The dream camera. Hmm. I mean, sort of the creme de la creme,
Mhm.
if you're gonna do it, is, a phase 1 medium format camera,
Okay.
which forget the lenses and everything else, you're already in at $50,000. It's insane. Yeah, yeah. I saw one in action because I did a private workshop with someone, and she had this beast of a camera, and, yeah, I didn't even know such a thing exists. The image quality from that camera is staggering. It's really impressive, but
Wow.
the reality of it is you're gonna go through so much memory on your hard drives with the size of the files. They're typically slower.
Mhm.
Yeah, 50,000, yes, holy crap is right. Plus the lenses and plus all of the other bells and whistles that you add onto it, but, yeah, that would be one I would be interested in playing with, but it's not a camera that you necessarily hold. You need it mounted on a tripod, like a really good solid studio tripod, and it's like, click.
Oh.
But yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful camera. I won't spend $50,000 even on a car, so I don't think it's happening.
But we can dream, right?
We can dream. Yeah, I mean, if money's no object, I what I would really like more than anything is just space to work. I just don't have adequate space to work. I'd like a giant warehouse.
Okay, so who do we know that has a giant warehouse that can help Jen out, please? Um, with so you talking about like doing workshops and things. Do you normally work like one-on-one workshops? Do you do group workshops?
So I've done a number of group workshops. I've done a couple of one-on-ones. I have one scheduled for the spring, and then I always am entertaining if people want to set up and do smaller groups, like a two, a one-on-two, one-on-three kind of thing.
Mhm.
But I've done a few organized workshops. I do enjoy them. It's a lot of work. Um, Most of the time, I'm hauling sort of the whole studio out to a space. And then, it's a lot of physical work getting there and bringing my computer and the whole bit, but, I do enjoy it. It's fun. I think it's nice to see people have aha moments, especially with the lighting, which is very elusive to a lot of people who just really never tried it before. So there's that part of it, and then, um, from a personal standpoint, you also kinda cement what you already know. And sometimes you start to, again, you synthesize things differently. You kind of see what someone else is figuring out, and then by them asking questions and you answering it, you're answering the questions that you didn't even realize you had for yourself. So it's kind of cool both of those ways.
Isn't it fun, like, when you're teaching someone and you just kind of watch, like, the magic kind of, like, light up in their eyes, and they're like, "Oh, I can do this, and the oh, I can do oh, I can do this," and you
Yeah.
just
Yeah, I mean, I remember a friend of mine showed me studio lighting for the first time. It was just one light, and I remember I was just blown away. I said, "This opens up a whole different world of portraiture. Like, this is so different than your standard headshots, and this is something I really wanna do." And I've seen it with folks, with sort of the typical lighting setup that I do. They'll come in and it's not complicated. It really isn't complicated. It can be done pretty easily even with 2 and 2 lights. And, you position the light a certain way, they take a picture and they go, "All right, I'm done." Like I have I have this picture and I'm really happy with it out of the camera. And it's really cool. I mean, it's still even for me, I've done so many shoots at this point, but it's really satisfying when the lighting is just right and the image pops up. I'm usually tethered, so it comes up in the computer, and I'm like, it just feels really good. It's a cool feeling.
This might be a very difficult question, but what has been your favorite shot that you've ever done?
Um, honestly, there's one shot that I go to, which was my friend's granddaughter, and it was, I'd say, on the earlier side of when I started really getting into sort of this painterly, um, way of shooting, but this girl just has one of these faces where some people have this face where the light travels over their bones in such a way that it just it really is magic, and there's one particular shot I have of this girl. It's very severe, it's very simple, very minimal, and
Mhm.
just everything hit right for me, and I will always go back to that shot, and that's, like, the shot that I think changed it for me. I said, like, that's my standard, like, I'm happy if this is sort of my baseline, I'm really happy with this. S Yeah.
Um, so we have another question here from the chat. How does one sign up for one of your workshops, and do you offer them via Zoom?
I have done Zoom. So usually people will reach out on Instagram. I'm getting ready to work on another workshop with a friend of mine, which is going to be, I think, in April in Fairfield, New Jersey. And we're going to put a flyer out for that probably in the next couple of weeks. So that will be posted on my Instagram and on his Instagram. And other than that, I do have a little blurb on my Instagram bio with how to contact me or DM, and then I can talk about how we would set up for privates and semi privates.
So, um, do you mind if I ask you just a couple lightning round questions?
Okay. Do I have
Yes.
like a buzzer?
Uh, I mean, hey, if you got a buzzer, please go get it. All right. So, with lightning round questions, just first thing that comes to your mind, if you want to explain or elaborate on any of them, you're more than welcome to, but you can just answer it and we can move on to the next lightning round question.
Okay.
All right. You
Chocolate.
ready? Dang it, you already took the first question. Man. Let's see. So, alive or dead, who is one person that you would love to have dinner with right now?
Mm. Ah, Vermeer.
Ooh, okay. I want to go back to that. Um, so, if you could be in any museum, whether you've been to it or not, what museum would you go to right now?
I would probably say the Louvre.
All right.
Yeah, I'd
And
probably say the Louvre.
what would you see in the Louvre? What would be the main attraction for you?
The David paintings.
Oh, yes. Okay,
Yes.
you're getting so many brownie points right now. Um, if you could give artists out there one piece of advice, what would you give them?
Experiment, play, don't analyze it. Just if it feels right to you, try it because it's not brain surgery. No one's going to die. And you have plenty of opportunities to do it another way. And that's just part of the experimenting and learning.
And my last question for the lightning round segment: what is the best piece of advice that someone has ever given you?
Um, yeah, just not to let all the noise around you bring you down. Because, you have those days where, you might work on something, you feel really good about it, and there's someone who honestly is not affecting anything in your life from that point forward, but they say something that just gets under your skin and just kind of like let it go. I guess that's true of anything, art or not. Just
Mhm.
you can't let someone else be that judge because it really doesn't matter. And I think when we're feeling insecure in certain ways for whatever reason, we put ourselves back in that place as a child where you think that there's some adult that knows better or has the right to tell you to do something a certain way. But really, no one, whether you're rich, famous, anything else, no one really trumps anyone else. We all really have the same opportunities. Some people have just, you know, ended up in more advantageous places, but no one really has any more opportunity than another.
I, there are times on the podcast that just kind of solidify why we're doing things like that. And I feel like the last podcast, including what you said just now, have offered up things that, whether you knew it or not, things that I needed here. So thank you.
Cool. Cool, cool.
Um, Kind of going back to your first answer to lightning round question, I would like to explore, why did you say Vermeer?
Um, I mean, he has so few paintings, really, if you look comparatively to the masters. And um, there's sort of a simplicity about it, but I'm just curious how much it was into. I want to know the process behind some of these things, and there's just sort of like a quiet to it. And I sort of want to know what it's like to be in the room when when he was creating these pieces, and how much of it was as he saw it versus what he was conjuring up. I don't know. There's something that's I feel that way about a lot of art that I really admire. Is there's just sort of a quiet to it. I can't explain
Mhm.
it other than that. It just something quiet about it. I don't know. I don't know. That's what I gravitate toward.
We were talking a little bit about it. For me, that quiet is giving space to have thought about something and like to open up a conversation. Um, like the art that really inspires me, kind of gets my creative juices going, is art that just lets it be. It puts something in the space before you and doesn't sway you one way or another. It just presents it as is and leaves you alone with your thoughts.
Mhm.
And it really starts to draw things out of you that you may not have realized before.
Right.
Uh, and I think that's what draws me to art. And I think that's what draws other people to art, because it doesn't force you what to think. It gives you the opportunity to say what you are thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, you can get into that whole philosophical conversation about what is art, an art versus craft versus, something that's just kitschy and whatever have you. But I think there has to be something where, like you said, there is that space and it can't be contrived. I think when it's really contrived and really overly constructed, I feel like that's where it kind of diverges and is less what it would, I don't know, what I would define as art. It's just doing it to do it. There's no real, I don't know, no real intention behind it other than to, like you said, to have a specific outcome. But it's all so subjective. I think, back to the critique thing, that's where I sort of struggle when you have people that are insinuating themselves and they say, well, I wouldn't do it this way, or I wouldn't do it that way, rather than come from it from a place of this makes me feel this way. I'm curious, why did you choose to do it that way? Rather than engage in a dialogue, it's sort of like, well, I expected this to be like this and you didn't deliver it like that. And I don't that's not right. I think that kind of criticism is really it's exhausting to get entangled with, and that's the stuff that gets frustrating and that is distracting. But it's a totally different thing when people will either say, "Have you tried this?" Or again, like ask the questions where that whole process that is art and it's drawing something out of both the viewer and the creator.
You were touching on so many like learning and like adult learning theory and that sort of stuff, like I really think that you should personally consider uh, learning and development because you have touched on so many things throughout this conversation, which tells me that you have thought about the human condition quite a bit. So,
Yeah.
first of all, I compliment you on that. That
Well,
is
thank you.
incredible.
Thank you. I
Uh,
went to school for teaching. My master's is in teaching, so I do have that background.
get out.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, and
That
some
is,
psychology, so maybe that's where it's coming from. It's, like, coming back to the forefront.
um, wow. Credence in our chat here says, I love the atmosphere in the paintings, and I just realized that you do that a lot in your photos.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Um,
Yeah, I'm excited because I'm finally traveling after 3 years of not traveling in March, and I'm gonna get an art fix. So I'm very excited. I'm gonna go to Rome in mid-March, and it even though I've seen a lot of the things that I wanna see them again, and I wanna see them from a different place.
mhm.
So, I'm really excited about that because I look at painting so differently now, so differently.
What are you most excited to go see?
Um, I love the Pantheon. It's just this insanely old, beautiful, I can't believe it's still standing, phenomenal sculpt like, you walk in there and you just ugh, your breath just is sucked out of you. It's so vast and just it's so beautiful.
To kind of imagine that something that grandiose was built by human hands, that's
I know, and without modern machinery and oh, it's incredible. It's really incredible.
uh,
I wanna visit also, Herculaneum where I have not been to Herculaneum, so I think I'll do a day trip down that way, which is also, better preserved than Pompeii, so I'm kind of excited to see that. Anything where you feel like you can kinda travel back and feel a little bit of what it was like to be in a different time, that's always really appealing.
I am not as caught up on some of like Greek and Roman culture. So, what is Herculaneum?
So, you know about Pompeii with Mount Vesuvius that erupted and basically buried the city.
Hmm.
So, Herculaneum was, I believe, was actually closer to the base of the volcano.
Hmm.
So, it's better preserved. I think it's because if I'm getting this correct, I think with Pompeii there was actually lava flow, but I think with Herculaneum it was more of this ash that had settled and sort of covered everything and preserved it kind of as it was. So you can walk through the streets and get a sense really of the scale of the streets and what the city looked like from whatever
Oh,
year it was, 79 AD or something crazy. Um, which is cool, and it's all, like, in the shadow of, Mount Vesuvius, which is this cool double-humped volcano in the middle of Naples.
they have a great photo of it. I'm pulling up the Wikipedia page right now, and there's an incredible shot of the Herculaneum
Mhm.
uh, with with some of the paintings, and they're still in incredible condition
Yeah,
for.
there are a lot of paintings that are still intact, a lot of frescoes, a lot of erotic frescoes, interestingly enough, in Herculaneum. There's if you Google that, yeah, you'll see some interesting things in there too.
Listener beware.
Yeah, but just that architecture, I mean, they had these beautiful atriums and these little sort of courtyards.
Oh, okay. Please tell me that you're going to bring back pictures and that you're going to have so many stories to tell.
Here's the weird thing. I have not I usually think about what you're gonna bring on a trip.
Hmm.
The camera hasn't even crossed my mind, and that might sound really strange. I normally I think, okay, I'm gonna bring this lens and that lens, and I'm not even thinking about it because to be there and just to be there is it's so adequate. It's so more than adequate just to experience it. It's just I don't know. I love Rome. I love the people. I love the food. I love the culture. I love everything about it. So the camera is. I'm not even thinking about the camera.
Just out of mind. You
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm sure I'll bring it, but it's not for it's not foremost of my mind.
is anyone going with you to Rome?
Yes, so this all came together very quickly, and, a really good friend of mine who I traveled to Italy once with, we were in the North. I called
Mhm.
her up, I said, "I'm planning a trip to Rome. Do you wanna come?" And she was hemming and hawing. She's like, "Ah." I'm like, "Come on." And, probably within an hour, her kids had already arranged that they would take off from work so they could cover her and the grandkids and everything else. So, she's coming along with me, which I'm very excited about. And a couple days later, I was speaking with another friend, and when I mentioned the trip, there was something that just, like, I just had this I'm like, you need to ask Teresa too." So I said, "Would you wanna come?" And she's like, "Yeah." And, like, that night, I think she got the ticket, so very excited,
God,
very
don't you
excited. It's nice to experience it when people are seeing it for the like, that's it's a really cool thing to experience it all over again through the eyes of someone who hasn't seen it.
it's like kinda going back to that workshop, it's like watching the light in someone and just go, "Oh,
Yeah.
oh."
Yeah. Well, that's why people have kids a lot of the time, because you kind of get to relive certain experiences all over again through them.
That makes a lot of sense. I never
I mean,
really
some
thought
people
about it
want
like that.
mini me's, but some people, there is some real value to that, especially as you get older and you get either more jaded or you don't think that there's quite as much for you to take in anymore. But when you can go back and experience those things all over again vicariously through the kids and watch their experience of it is really, really it's a cool thing.
That I like that perspective. Um, I'm like I comment on like when I hear really good philosophies on parenting and that sort of thing. I would like to call that out and say I think it's clear that you are a very good parent, especially from the perspectives, and it sounds like you have a very healthy relationship with your kids. So I just have to compliment you.
Thank you. Yeah, they're good guys. I like them. I like them a lot, actually. I do. Yeah, I like my kids a lot.
Have they ever been on a photo shoot with you?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, I used to drag my younger one, into the studio all the time, and he was good up until I'd say about, late 15, early 16.
Mhm.
Um, I dragged him to the Netherlands when I did this workshop, with this photographer, and this poor child, he was dressed with the ruff and the
Oh,
tights,
oh.
the doublet, like, the whole thing, and he just sat there with this scowl on his face, and I was like, "You're gonna appreciate this one day." I don't know if he appreciates it yet, it was a few years ago, but I was really happy he got to do that.
Please tell me that you have photographic evidence still.
I do. I have the one picture out of that workshop that we focused on is I will treasure that picture of him for a
Oh,
long time. Yeah, yeah.
I
It's
hope he
very
looks oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
I hope he looks back one day and it's like, "You know what? That's a really cool picture. I'm glad I got to do that."
Yeah, he's not there yet. Yeah, a couple years. He's too cool for school right
Oh, God.
now.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah. Mhm, mhm. I remember those days.
What Archer, right? Oh, you were just preparing him to become a Ren Fair fan. Oh gosh,
Yes.
I could not drag him. Maybe he would like one of the turkey legs. I think that would be the only way to get him to the Ren Fair.
Okay, honestly, what is it about the turkey legs? Because Seth did the same thing. He was like, "Yeah, I want to go to the run fair and I want to get a big turkey leg."
They're big, and you know what? They're really good, but they're very, very salty. And I think if you were to really finish one of those, you'd regret it.
He got about halfway through one and is just like, I think I have a
There's
meat."
so much salt. They're really good for, like, the first 4 bites, and then you need to put it down and walk away.
I gotta say though, like, just on a complete side tangent about Ren Fair food, um, some of there's some really good food at Ren Fair.
Yeah? I've only been once to Ren Fair. What
Um,
else is good there?
so the one that we went to, the Carolina Ren Fair, um, the turkey leg was actually really good. I got like a little piece of it off of with Seth's turkey leg, and just that little bite was nice. It still didn't explain the like wanting to sit there with a giant like gob of turkey on your arm, but I respect it. The what did I get there? I got a big thing of mead, which was actually really
Oh,
good.
okay, yeah, yeah.
And then I got a sandwich with some pulled, I think it was like roast beef or brisket or something. Like just some like big sandwich thing. Was actually really good.
Cool.
Hey, meat and mead. What more could you ask for?
Yeah, the one I went to, they had a winery that was next door, and there was actually some really good wine. I think it was some kind of like a honey wine. It wasn't mead though, or it was maybe it was a flavored mead.
Mhm.
Maybe it was. It was good. I was surprised. Ren Fair is a
Archer's.
weird place. It's a weird place.
Oh, but it's beautiful for the amalgamation of people that just show up.
So, but my question is always, why fairies and elves? Why the fairy? Like, some of it gets into the realm of like, what is this about? Some of it just is, yeah, it's weird. It's confusing to me.
I think because of a lot of like some of our modern fairy tales really started to form in at that place, and where those stories come from and what Ren fairs are based off of, at least from my perspective, kind of fall into a lot of Irish, a lot of Scottish folklore, and so delves into the elves, the fairies, and that sort of thing. And so it's this kind of intersection between um, both of those realms together.
Yeah, Archer wrote, yeah, Ren Fair is as much fantasy fair as anything. Yeah, that's very true. There's some stuff that you kind of go, like, what is that? What's that creature?
I do have to say though, I went 1 week. I mean, I've seen Klingon show. I have seen anime characters at Ren Fair. Like legitimately watching Japanese anime characters walk down the street, and I went, "How? You know what? We're gonna roll with it. We're gonna roll with it." Um, let's see, but yeah, it is very interesting, but what I will say is that if you have the courage, the creativity, and that is your outlet for creativity, I'm not gonna knock it. I may not always
Yeah,
understand it, but I'm
yeah,
not gonna knock it.
yeah. Oh, definitely, definitely. Yeah.
Um, I will give some kudos though. There were some like people who dressed up as like toadstool or like mushroom fairies
Okay.
who had these giant mushroom hats on, and some of them were so meticulously done, and then it's like everything else that went along with it is this very cottagecore inspired garb, and like I gotta give it up, that took some creativity.
Oh yeah. I mean, you can definitely put a lot into it. And you see there are people that really do put a lot into it. And I'm sure there are probably season passes for these things, right? Where they
Yes.
right? Yeah.
They're not cheap, but they are
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. I couldn't believe how many people, and I was there shortly after things just started opening up, and oh my gosh, trying to get parking, and it's so popular, so, so popular.
It is, but it's also a great place to go and people watch.
Yeah.
Um, I got my fortune read, which was really fun. Anyway, I could gab about rent fairs all day long. Um,
It's like
but
the New York subway.
oh god, oh my god, memories. Um, we did a couple auditions up in New York City, and okay, the New York subway system is a completely other just
Oh, yeah.
madhouse.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But Jennifer, before we kind of close out tonight's podcast, I want to make sure that our listeners are able to connect with you. So I just would like to ask, like, where are you most active, and where can our listeners stay in tuned with you with the most up to date information?
Yeah, usually, via Messenger, so either via Facebook or at Visuals is the account that I check the most. So I'm pretty responsive there. And I'm pretty accessible, pretty easy to find.
And just for reference, that is facebook.com /visuals with three Z's, VIZZZUALS, or follow her on Instagram at visuals. Or you can follow her other two accounts at visuals faces and still_visuals. How'd I do?
Awesome. That's perfect.
Yes. Perfect. Uh, Yes. So I do want to say again, thank you so much for being on tonight.
Thank you for having me. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
it was a pleasure to chat again. Um, let's do this again in 6 months and see
All right.
where we are in 6 months.
That sounds good. Maybe I'll have some goals by then.
Yes.
Yes.
We'll look for stories. We're going to look for your youngest to be what his next picture that you're going to set him up in. So we'll we'll look for what you're planning for your youngest next.
And if he says no, I have the cats, and they don't argue with me.
Yes. Uh, so, folks, I do want to just remind you that we have made it a full year. We are officially 1 year old. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon. We want to give a big shout out to everyone who has tuned in, our supporters, subscribers, our moderator Josh, our producer Sandra. This episode, along with probably every other episode forever and ever, is going to be dedicated to Joe Capone, our moderator, fellow comedian, critic, encourager, and great friend. Find us pretty much wherever you can tune into podcasts for updates, announcements, and even more. Please follow us on social media under Modern Romantic. Thank you, everyone. Have a visual day. We love you. Bye.